I'm hot. Look at my feet.
Okay, senior thesis day 1 is almost finished, but not before we have Kathryn Thaxton.
Good afternoon. My name's Kathryn Thaxton, and I'll be presenting my thesis on children of divorce, the need for stability of one household. Divorce is now a predictable, common in for marriages. According to the Bible, in Genesis 1:28 and Ephesians 5:25, marriage is meant to be a lifelong commitment filled with love and faithfulness. The Bible acknowledges infidelity and abandonment as valid reasons for divorce. However, these are not the only 2 reasons for a divorce nowadays, as reasons for divorce span from irreconcilable differences to lack of commitment. Who suffers the most when divorce ensues? Children, because they are not given the choice of when divorce happens. What should parents do? Parents should be able to listen to their children's suggestions of whose house to stay at full time for stability in that child's everyday lifestyle. How should children be able to grow up in 2 homes when one of the homes has committed adultery, broken trust, broken love, and broken a family just to meet their own desires? Imagine what a child hears when it is revealed to them that a parent has committed adultery. Oftentimes, the children will experience instability and hear lots of destruction in the family. As a result, the children may have to leave their home, the only place they have known, the place where they have made memories, all for the sake of one parent who selfishly chose to abandon wedding vows and holy commitment for their own selfishness. As the children age, they have more understanding about their parents' past actions, and it is likely that the parents will continue with this same behavior, which confirms that children should be able to choose a single home in which to live in. According to a local counselor, Cindy Willis, she states that it is reasonable for the affected child to feel hurt, angry, and have serious trust issues with this parent. She even goes on to say that it is normal for the child to defend the innocent parent over time against the parent that has committed adultery. Again, this reiterates that children should be allowed to choose a single home in which to live in. The Bible teaches us as Christians how to forgive other people, but applying that to our own lives is extremely challenging. In Forgiving What You Can't Forget, author Lisa Turkis, she discusses the emotional struggle of moving past hurt when a spouse has committed adultery. Marriage is meant to set an example of commitment for children, but when parents Marriage is meant to set an example of commitment for children. But when parents violate time with their child, then this parent puts time with their child at risk. Children often will mirror these same behaviors and dysfunctions, and over time, children normalize dysfunction, believing that constant conflict is a part of everyday lifestyle. Parents that shelter their children from these difficult dynamics can affect how children treat others, as well as future relationships later on in adulthood life. The way divorce is handled can shape a child's emotional responsibility for life. Negative comments from one parent about the other may cause tension and distress, as children see their parents as their main source of support throughout life. Courts may not always grasp the full impact of dynamics, making it critical for families and communities to provide emotional guidance for a child. Parents who commit adultery should be forced to forfeit their rights to having the children live with them. Since stability in their own home is absent, how will they be able to provide a stable home for a child? Cindy Willis also states that, quote, adultery does, however, create serious trust issues for most of the family involved, and it is the parent's job to make amends of sorts, end quote. There is a possibility that an adulterous parent could have stability with their children. However, that does not mean what they did is not wrong and needs to be told to the child later on in life. Once again, children need stability when parents are getting a divorce. Constant supportive figures, whether that be a grandparent, teacher, or someone else, can provide the child with emotional guidance when parents are absent in that child's life. In a study conducted, the researchers concluded that children of divorced parents experience less parental time, declining social support, as well as financial strain. Children of divorce also do not receive the mental health support needed to be able to cope through a divorce. Divorce can be necessary when all other efforts to repair the relationship have failed, but too often this disrupts a child's stability that they need for everyday lifestyles. The loss of family can make the child feel responsible for the divorce later on in life. Children may even repeat these same patterns in adulthood relationships, which makes it crucial that divorce does affect children. Children moving between homes can create struggle of going back and forth and emotional strain. Parents bribing their children with gifts or money does not replace the emotional security needed in a child's life. Andre P. Dedrin states that there's been an increase in the rights of children themselves, as well as changes in custody laws reflect revolving social views on parental roles. A study was conducted from 1960 to 2014 of single-parent households. Single mother households increased from 8% in 1960 to 27% in 2014, as well as single father households almost tripling that number, going from 1% in 1960 to 8% in 2014, as well as single parent households in general going from 9% in 1960 to 27% in 2014. Parents that negatively comment about the other parent cause tension during the divorce. When one parent needlessly criticizes the other, confusion and distrust may overwhelm a child. As Christians, we have to be a steady presence in the child's life. Children that are not able to cope the correct and healthy way find it harder to be able to make decisions as adults due to the lack thereof in trauma that has not properly been dealt with from childhood. What children see is what they do. Children from divorced parents need stability, even when parents seek happiness elsewhere. While unfaithful parents may still provide stability for a child, their actions can create deep trust issues within the family. Parents should focus on self-contentment before being allowed to spend time with their child. Some parents rush into new relationships too soon after a divorce, without allowing themselves the time needed to regain stability in their own lifestyle. Parents may even delegate their own parental responsibility onto their children without allowing the children to have a carefree childhood. When children do not receive the mental health support needed to be able to cope through a divorce, then this child will seek that support elsewhere. The quality of emotional bonds formed in childhood influences one's attachment style and expression in romantic relationships later on in life. This highlights how essential it is for families and communities to provide emotional guidance for a child. Parents going through a divorce should be able to prioritize their children's needs over their own wants and desires. Imagine you're a child and your parents are getting a divorce. What emotions would you feel? Confusion? Hurt? Distrust? Maybe even you're trying to make sense of a world that feels unstable. The truth is, children do not always know what they want or need emotionally and mentally, especially when faced with big life changes such as divorce. But too often, parents get caught up in their own emotions and fail to prioritize their children's needs over their own wants and desires. Some parents may even be overwhelmed and rely on others to take care of their children, rather than being a steady presence in that same child's life. In some cases, courts make decisions that do not serve the child's best interest. At the heart of it all, children need stability, love, and a parent who puts them first. Research continues to show that the stability of having both parents involved plays a critical role in a child's well-being. But when trust is broken in a family, Over the years, children have learned to adapt. However, should they really have to choose between parents? Should they be forced to grow up without seeing one parent every day? The courts make these decisions, but the question remains, are the courts truly acting on the best interest of the child? Now, some people may argue that in extreme cases, removing a parent may be necessary. In an article, Keeping the Child Away from the Other Parent Can Backfire, and Here is How, by B. Robert Fazard, he warned us that if a parent violates a custody order and is reckless, then this same parent puts time with their own child at risk. At the end of the day, children need stability, love, and a parent who puts them first. The system must recognize this and ensure that children are not the ones suffering from choices beyond their own control. Now, imagine you're a judge, faced with a tough decision, having to decide which parent a child should live with. If both parents are loving and capable, it almost seems unfair. However, what if both parents are harmful? Then what? Who decides which bad situation is less detrimental for a child? If a child is still growing emotionally and mentally, then how should they truly understand what they are choosing if they are given the option to choose which parent to live with? It puts a huge weight on the child, one in which they may not be ready to carry. Should a judge who has never been in the home truly have a say in what goes on in that child's life for the future? What if the judge doesn't know what's going on behind closed doors and they make a wrong decision? What happens to that child then? What about a grandparent? Sometimes they may need to step in and take care of the child before, after, or even during a divorce. The truth is, children need adults who are willing to step back, look at the whole picture, and put the child's needs before their own wants and emotions. Whether it is a parent, judge, or someone else involved, we need to ask, what is best for the child in the long run? To conclude everything that has been stated before, children are already going through enough stress. They need more support, not more pressure. So the next time children or custody is at the forefront, we need to make sure we have the children in mind before anyone else and support the children. That support is best given in the promise of stability. While children should be allowed and encouraged to have relationships with both parents, they should also be allowed to live in one singular household. Children, once again, need stability, love, and a parent who puts them first. Thank you. I'd now like to open the floor for any questions.
I have one to start
Yes.
out with. Can you define maybe a little bit further? I think I have a pretty clear sense of what instability looks like by some of the negative things that you described. Can you maybe give a fuller definition of what you mean by when you say stability?
So whenever I define stability, I mean like the child sleeping in one singular bed and not going back and forth or forgetting things back and forth. So it was brought to me by a teacher at the school that in Florida, there's a law where the children stay in the house and the parents actually go back and forth between households, and that's a law that they have so that the children have stability of having one household, having one closet, one pantry, and everything like that. So that's what I mean by stability. Yes.
So good job. I'm going to interject this because this kind of touches to what you just said. I have some good friends who used to live here in Shreveport. They moved away. Husband was abusive. They had 10 kids, and he had lots of money. She didn't have much, and so the judge basically forced them to live in the same property together until their kids are out. Which for the dad, he was like really frustrated by that. But I think for the kids, it's actually been good along the lines. But in your paper, you did a lot of you had a lot of piercing, soul-searching questions about how judges should make decisions, how parents should respond, and children, needing to have input, but it's not fair to put it all on the child too. If you're a judge and you're trying to figure out these things, how do you think you go about figuring these things out? Because a courtroom, everybody's presents themselves in the best light. I messed up, but like I love my kids, I'm a great parent. Like how do you go about thinking through those decisions if you're a judge?
So in a lot of my research, judges do have court-ordered therapy sessions as family therapist as well as just the child with the therapist. So that was a big thing to help find like what the child really needs rather than what the parents want out of the divorce with the child. So does that answer? Okay.
I guess I have a question that's more of a clarifying question. Is your stance, Kat, that a child should be able to make this decision only in cases of adultery? Or so I guess another way to ask that would be, what about in cases where maybe I'll just say irreconcilable differences where you have two healthy, functioning parents? What happens then, I guess?
So a year ago, whenever we were like starting this, it was more so about the adultery part. But after just me doing research and everything, it kind of became more of just stability of children needing one home. And it's really just that children do need one singular home to live in, to have stability of not forgetting things and things like that. Does that clarify?
Yeah, and I guess a follow-up question would be, like I get the idea of the child being the one making the decision. It's one thing if your kid is a teenager and maybe has a little more of their faculties about them, debatable. But I think it would be difficult to think about a child making that decision as well. So would you advocate like 100% it should be up to the child, or how do you see that decision practically working out?
So I know that there's a law where at 14 years of age, in Louisiana at least, you get the choice of who you want to stay with and when you want to stay with them. However, I do think that children should go to therapy and the therapist should have a bigger say into what the child wants, if that helps. Yes, Ms. Harris.
Did you do any research around percentages of court decisions? Like I feel like the majority always is the child should have, we heard that this child should have a relationship with both parents, so we're going to push that as much as possible in putting them in split custody. Did you get any usually it falls this way, but there's a percentage where it doesn't? Did you come across that at all?
I did not come across that at all. I'm sorry. It is a good question, though.
Okay, Kathryn, I do have a question for you. So about a year ago, when you were deciding on your topic, I guess it kind of started a little bit with forgive and forget, right? Isn't that what we're supposed to do? Just forgive and forget all the things, all the bad memories we have or bad experiences that we have. And as a Christian, sometimes we're not forgetting them. We still have the memory. Not that we're angry about it still or hurt by it still, but the memory is still there. So you read a book titled Forgiving What You Can't Forget. Mm-hmm. When reading that book, can you think of anything that stood out when it comes to, when we're told to just forgive and forget?
What stood out really was just knowing that what people did was wrong, but still loving them for them and not holding that against them. Does that answer your question? Okay. Yes, Sophie.
Do you think that there can be positive outcomes in a child switching homes rather than just the parents switching? Do you think that can teach the child responsibility rather than just you'll learn next time to remember what you need to bring?
I think depending on the child, yes. Going back and forth between my parents, it did cause a lot of responsibility for me having to remember things. But I know for other children, it can cause a lot of stress, because it did for me as well, stress and anxiety of just having to remember to pack my cheer uniforms and volleyball uniforms and everything, and not really having the stability of having one singular closet where I could remember to get all that things, but having a backpack more so that I just carried back and forth. So, does that answer? Yeah, okay. Molly?
Do you think it's better for a child to stay in one house that's filled with like division and strife than, I don't know if that's a word, or strife, or my bad, or go back and forth between two houses?
At that point, if both parents are loving and they're not negatively talking bad about each other to the child, then I think going back and forth would be better than having a house where the parents are arguing all the time and fighting and things like that. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Kat, I always think it's so interesting how all of your senior thesis topics sort of flow together even when you don't intend them to. And you and I have had a lot of conversations about being children of divorce, as I too am one. And I think about what Leela stood up here and talked about. And one of the things she didn't touch on, because that's not what her research was, and why covenant marriage is so important, is the effects that come from that splitting up. And I didn't really have anywhere I was going with that. I was just sitting here having a thought, and I thought I would say something. So that's what it is. But I know you've worked hard, and that was a difficult thing for you to get up and talk about today. And I think you did a very good job.
Thank you.
From one Kathryn to another.
If there are no further questions, thank you.